The Elysian Express departed from Paris, gliding elegantly along the tracks. Sophia, seated in a luxurious first-class carriage, stared out the window at the passing scenery but felt trapped in her own life. Her parents, always obsessed with appearances, had forced her to travel with Bernard, an arrogant businessman to whom she was betrothed. "Smile, Sophia, remember this trip is crucial for your future," her mother ordered. Sophia took a deep breath but didn't reply. In the economy carriage, Daniel adjusted his camera while marveling at the opportunity to be on that train. He had won his ticket in a journalism contest, and his goal was to document the passengers' stories. "Such an elegant place for such real lives," he murmured, adjusting his focus. His mind was on his work, but he had a strange feeling this journey would change his life. Bored with Bernard's monotonous conversations about business, Sophia decided to explore the train. As she wandered through the narrow corridors, she felt the air change as she crossed into the economy carriages. There she found Daniel photographing an elderly woman. As she stumbled slightly, she caught his attention. "Excuse me," she whispered softly. Daniel looked up, intrigued. "No problem, mademoiselle," he replied with a warm smile. "Are you a photographer?" Sophia asked, curious but trying to sound casual. Daniel smiled. "I'm a journalist, actually. Photography is just part of the job." Sophia hesitated for a moment before asking, "And why are you here?" He answered honestly, "To tell stories that matter." "And you? You don't seem like you belong in this carriage." She chuckled lightly. "Maybe I don't belong anywhere." Over the next few days, Sophia returned to the economy carriages, always finding Daniel. They talked for hours and he made her laugh like no one else ever had. "So, what do you really want from life?" he asked. Sophia looked out the window, lost in thought. "Freedom. I want to choose my own path. But that feels impossible." Daniel watched her intently. "Nothing is impossible, Sophia. You just need courage." Sophia began escaping the formalities and Bernard more often. One afternoon she found Daniel in one of the cargo carriages, photographing the sunset. "I knew I'd find you here," she said, smiling. "Ah, so now you know where I like to hide," he joked. She sat beside him and for the first time she felt like she could be herself. Bernard, irritated by Sophia's growing distance, confronted her during dinner. "You're disappearing all the time. Where have you been?" he demanded angrily. Sophia kept her composure. "Walking around. The train is big, you know." Bernard glared at her suspiciously. "You'd better remember your responsibilities, Sophia. Don't toy with your reputation." She rolled her eyes and left the table without a word. That night, Sophia confided in Daniel. "They want me to marry Bernard. They think he's perfect for me." Daniel frowned. "And do you think so?" She shook her head. "I've never had a choice." He looked deeply into her eyes. "Maybe it's time for you to make your own choice, Sophia." His words echoed in her mind and she knew he was right. As the days went by, their bond grew stronger. Daniel showed Sophia how to capture moments with his camera, and she began to see him not just as a journalist but as an artist. "This photo is incredible," she said, admiring his work. "You have a special talent." He smiled. "Maybe my real talent is making you smile." She laughed, but her heart raced. Meanwhile, tension between Sophia and her family grew. Her parents began suspecting her escapes and pressured her to spend more time with Bernard. During a gala night in the main carriage, Bernard tried to show off by dancing with Sophia, but her mind was elsewhere. "You're distracted," Bernard said, annoyed. "I'm just tired," she replied, glancing at the door, hoping for an escape. During the gala night, Sophia silently slipped away to the cargo carriage, knowing Daniel would be there. He was sitting watching the moonlight through the large windows. "Escaping the party?" he asked, noticing her arrival. "You know me so well," she replied with a soft laugh. She sat beside him, and for a moment the world felt simpler. "Here, everything feels less suffocating," she confessed. "You don't deserve to live like this, Sophia," Daniel said, breaking the silence. She turned to him, surprised by the intensity of his words. "And how do I change that?" "I can't just disappear," she replied, sadness in her voice. Daniel took her hand for the first time. "Maybe you don't have to disappear. Maybe you just need to fight." His touch brought warmth to Sophia's heart. The next morning, Bernard noticed Sophia becoming increasingly distant. Determined to uncover the truth, he followed her and, to his fury, found her laughing with Daniel in the cargo carriage. "So this is it?" Bernard said, his voice filled with rage. Sophia quickly stood up. "Bernard, it's not what you think," she tried to explain. But he interrupted her. "You're throwing your life away for someone like him?" Daniel remained calm. "With all due respect, this isn't your decision." The argument escalated. "You don't understand your position, Sophia. You have a bright future with me. And him? What can he give you?" "Nothing," Bernard shouted. For the first time, Sophia stood up to him directly. "I don't want a future with you, Bernard. I want to be happy, and that's something money can't buy." Bernard stormed off, furious, vowing that this wasn't over. Meanwhile, Sophia's parents learned about the confrontation from Bernard and were outraged. "Sophia, what's going on?" her mother demanded, pulling her aside. "You're ruining our family's reputation with this rebellion." Sophia tried to argue, "I just want to be free." "Why is that so wrong?" Her mother shook her head in disbelief. "You have a duty to this family, and your father won't tolerate this behavior." That night, the train entered a mountainous region covered in snow, and a storm began to form. The carriages swayed slightly as the conductor struggled to maintain control. Sophia found Daniel again, this time with determination in her eyes. "Do you believe we can change this?" she asked. "I believe in you, Sophia," he replied. "We just need courage." The train shook violently as an avalanche hit the tracks, forcing it to an abrupt stop. Screams echoed through the carriages as passengers tried to understand what had happened. Sophia grabbed Daniel's arm. "What was that?" she asked, frightened. "I think we're stuck," he replied, peering out the window at the snow blocking the path. Chaos spread through the train, especially in the first-class carriages, where wealthy passengers demanded immediate answers. Bernard tried to take control of the situation, barking orders that no one listened to. Meanwhile, Daniel and Sophia worked together to help passengers in the economy class, distributing blankets and calming the terrified. "You're safe with me," he told her, holding her trembling hands. As the cold intensified and supplies began to run low, the passengers formed small groups to survive. Sophia was amazed by Daniel's natural leadership. "You're saving these people," she said admiringly. He simply shook his head. "I'm just trying to do what's right. We're all on the same train after all." Bernard, however, wasn't ready to give up control over Sophia. He confronted her in an empty corridor. "Do you think he'll take care of you when this is over? You belong to a different world, Sophia, and you'll never be accepted in his." Now more confident, Sophia replied, "I'd rather fight for something real with him than live a lie with you." The storm worsened and the train remained buried under snow. Sophia and Daniel worked tirelessly to help the other passengers, sharing what little food and blankets were left. "You've been my strength through all of this," Sophia said as they rested for a moment in the corner of the carriage. Daniel gave her a soft smile. "And you've been mine, Sophia. With you I feel like I can face anything." Meanwhile, Sophia's parents and Bernard were plotting. "She's lost her mind, completely blinded by this man," her father declared. Bernard, consumed by jealousy, saw an opportunity. "Leave it to me. I'll put an end to this foolishness," he assured them. Sophia's mother nodded reluctantly. "Make sure you bring her back to us. She has responsibilities to this family." Late at night, Bernard confronted Daniel in front of other passengers. "This man is stealing from you all," he shouted, pointing a finger. "I saw him hiding supplies for himself." Gasps erupted from the crowd as Bernard's accusations spread. Sophia stepped forward immediately. "That's a lie. Daniel would never do such a thing." But tension was high and some passengers began to doubt. Daniel was taken into custody by the train's security team, who were unsure but pressured to act. Sophia ran after him, desperate. "I'll prove you're innocent," she said, tears streaming down her face. Daniel, calm despite the situation, placed his hand on hers. "I trust you, Sophia. No matter what happens, I'll always believe in us." Sophia began gathering testimonies from the passengers Daniel had helped. She approached a man in the cargo carriage. "Did you see Daniel take anything for himself?" she asked urgently. "Absolutely not. He's been helping the elderly and the children the entire time," the man replied, angry at the accusation. Slowly but surely, Sophia pieced together enough evidence to clear Daniel's name. Bernard, however, wasn't done. He convinced Sophia's parents to prepare for her immediate return to Paris once the train was rescued. "She doesn't know what's best for her," Bernard argued. "We have to act quickly before she ruins her life." Her father nodded. "As soon as we're free from this train, she's coming back with us, no questions asked." 2 days later, Sophia successfully proved Daniel's innocence. He was released, and as soon as she saw him, she ran into his arms. "I knew you didn't give up on me," he said, holding her tightly. "Never," Sophia whispered. The moment was brief as Bernard stood watching them, his fury barely contained. Sophia ignored him, focusing only on Daniel. Rescue helicopters finally arrived, airlifting passengers to safety. Sophia knew this was her last chance to escape her parents' and Bernard's grasp. She pulled Daniel aside. "We have to run. It's the only way we can stay together," she said, her voice trembling but determined. Daniel looked into her eyes and nodded. "Wherever you go, I'll follow." As the passengers were being evacuated, Sophia and Daniel waited for the right moment. They slipped out through a side exit unnoticed and into the snowy wilderness. Holding hands tightly, they trekked through the harsh landscape. "Where will we go?" Sophia asked, shivering. "To a place where no one knows us. A place we can finally be free," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite the cold. Days later, they arrived in a small Italian village in Tuscany. The town was peaceful, surrounded by rolling hills and vineyards. They rented a modest cottage, its windows overlooking the golden fields. Daniel found work writing for a local newspaper, while Sophia began teaching art to children. It's not much, but it's ours, Sophia said one evening, gazing at the sunset. Daniel smiled. And that's all we'll ever need. The village embraced Sophia and Daniel like old friends. Their new life was simple yet fulfilling. Sophia began painting the Tuscan landscapes, golden fields, olive trees, and sun-drenched vineyards. Daniel's articles, focused on the everyday lives of villagers, gained popularity in the small community. "This place feels like it was waiting for us," Sophia said one morning as she worked on a canvas. Daniel looked at her with admiration. "It was. And we were waiting for it." Months passed and their bond grew stronger. One evening as they walked through the vineyards, Sophia shared unexpected news. "Daniel, we're going to have a baby," she said, her voice trembling with both joy and nerves. He stopped in his tracks, staring at her in disbelief before breaking into a wide smile. "A baby?" he repeated, pulling her into his arms. "You've just made me the happiest man alive." As their family grew, so did their love for their new home. They transformed their small cottage into a warm and vibrant home, filled with laughter and love. Sophia painted murals on the walls, and Daniel built a small desk where he could write while their baby played nearby. "We may not have much, but this is everything I've ever wanted," Sophia said one evening. Daniel kissed her forehead. "Me too. This is what freedom feels like." Years later they had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who brought endless joy to their lives. Sophia continued to paint, selling her work at the village market, while Daniel published a book about their journey and the lessons they learned. The villagers became their extended family, celebrating their milestones and supporting them through challenges. "I never imagined life could be this beautiful," Sophia said as she watched their children run through the fields. "That's because we made it beautiful," Daniel replied. On a warm summer evening, Sophia and Daniel sat together on the hill behind their cottage, watching the sun set over the Tuscan countryside. Their children played nearby, their laughter filling the air. Sophia leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. "I never regretted choosing you," she whispered. Daniel held her hand tightly. "And I never stopped choosing you." In the quiet beauty of their new life, they found the freedom, love, and happiness they had always dreamed of.